Hey there, and welcome back to the Smell of Logic channel. I am Ramona, and today's Reddit story. Maybe more than one video, I don't know, depends on how far we get through these. Who is the scariest person you've ever met? Now, a lot of this will probably be subjective, of course, but, and scare and fear is in the eye of the beholder, I guess you could say. But here we go. We're going to start with this one. Ready? Probably this dude I worked with at a local library around the time I was 17 or 18. He was my age. I worked with his older brother at the local grocery store when I was 16, and his dad was a teacher in 5th grade. Was a nice guy, quiet, helpful. We'd chat whenever we had a research paper for school or a project. He murdered both of them as well as his brother's girlfriend. He was sent to prison and was shot trying to escape. As a close second, a man who was a janitor in my high school. Super nice dude, hilarious. Years later, he kidnapped and murdered a girl. A famous case locally, went on for years. You never really know who could be a killer, etc. Be safe, be kind, and be smart. A guy who ordered a teenager to shoot up a truckload of girls on the way to school. It was a really big deal locally, and these girls started school that day. The guy who ordered the attack was completely nonchalant when questioned about it. Of course I told the teenager to do this. He wanted his soul saved from hell, so I told him when and how. Of course, they should die, the girls. They were on their way for being made into whores for America. We had to stop them from being corrupted, etc. He acted like it was the most commonplace, banal thing he'd ever done, like tossing a piece of paper into a trash can or cutting up vegetables. Of course I cut up the carrots. How else do you put them in the stew? It was insane. He was terrifying. Excuse me. One of my friends in high school was a seriously nice guy. Nothing off-putting about him, except for his obsession with meteorology and how the weather affected some local wildfires that had been ravaging our area. Yeah, a few months later he was imprisoned for starting those fires that risked lives and homes all around our town. Pastor at a local megachurch goes into a doctor's office I used to work at. The church is basically a cult at this point, and everyone outside of it knows it. He walked into the door while I was at the front desk, and right away all of my higher faculties just got hijacked. I don't know how to explain it. In that moment, I wanted to be the most fantastic receptionist he'd ever met in his life. I wanted to impress him so badly it hurt. The second he walked out, I came back to myself and was like, what the hell just happened? A few months later, the exact same happened again. I want to stay very far away from that man. This kid in my junior high was definitely a weirdo. He flashed me and some other girls more than once on his campus. His mom was killed in a burglary gone wrong, until they found all the stuff allegedly stolen from the house, tossed into the woods in the neighborhood that the son's fingerprints were all over it. He'd beaten her to death, then faked the break-in. Honestly, my brother. He has severe mental illness that's incredibly unpredictable. Months go by with him seeming fine, and there's a day that he just completely shifts. Having dealt with it for over a decade now, you'd think you'd get used to it, but you don't. You just get smarter about seeing a break coming. There's no countdown timer, though half the time it doesn't end up being anything, but saying something about it can trigger that break. The reason it's terrifying is because it's almost always around either myself, my mom, or my dad, and it goes from 0 to 200 in the blink of an eye. The first violent episode, it was just me. We just fought intensely for a while, and he went around smashing everything he could find until the cops came and had to track him down, tackle him. People joke about crazy strength, but it is no joke. Since then, he's been stun-gunned, tased, flashbanged, and beanbagged by police. Most separate incidents, but sometimes multiple times. He violently threw my mid-60s mom to the ground. He cornered my dad with a knife when he came to check on him at his apartment, which my dad did because someone who knew my brother called him to let him know that he was sitting in a public park in the city, repeatedly stabbing a knife into the ground. That fiasco ended with my brother being taken down by SWAT. He's been involuntarily admitted to mental health facilities more than a dozen times, but they have a catch and release policy until you've got insane money, which neither of us do, and neither does he nor us do. I've learned a frightening amount about both our legal system and the mental health system throughout these years, and there are holes big enough to drive a bus through. At this point, my dad has moved out of the country, so the only option was for my brother was to move in with my mom or be homeless, and she couldn't begin to entertain the idea of making her son homeless. After years of never owning a firearm, I do now, and have a completely different perspective on why it may be necessary for some people. Some people just love guns, but some people have a legitimate reason for needing one. Thankfully for now, he's not a threat to either one of us. Our relationships with him seemed to be going better, but then he got it all in his head that we were part of a conspiracy that was seeking to kill him, so he went to the police station to report it. They both know myself and my mom. At this point, they've met us several times. So they called the EMTs, and that spooked him. So he pulled out a knife and stabbed one of the cops, went through the Kevlar. Thankfully, the cop was okay after some stitches, but because of what happened, he's now past the requirements to be kept in a mental health facility for a while. No idea how long, though, and once he's out, he'll be going back to my mom's. Oh, and the cop is suing my mom and trying to go after her homeowner's insurance, which would very well make them drop her, even if it doesn't go anywhere, and she would have an extremely difficult time trying to find a new company that would cover her based on all of this. So there's that. He will get out eventually. He will go back to my mom's, and then it's just a matter of time until the consistent escalations of this reaches the next level. He's only gotten worse over the years, and I'm terrified of what the next manifestation will be. Probably my 6th-grade science teacher. I wasn't very social back then and didn't really have any friends, but that's beside the point. One day he saw me looking more depressed than usual and asked me what was wrong. I told him I was just sad about not being able to make any friends, and he smiled, looked at me, and invited me to the park after school to talk about it. I was kind of young and happy someone had acknowledged me, so after class I agreed. He was an hour late and pulled up next to the park and told me to hop in, to which I was very confused. I ended up doing it anyway, though, and he turned on this child lock and sped off. He then reached into the glove box and pulled out a .22 pistol, pulled up to a bunch of kids on the side of the road, gestured for me to take the gun and shoot. I was effing frozen. I had no idea what the F he wanted me to do, and he was getting impatient. He looked at me, I looked at him, and I screamed for help. The kids heard and saw me and started to get people's attention. The teacher grabbed my arm, and I attempted to shoot him in the wrist, but the safety restricted it, or something. I didn't know a thing about the guns at that point. He grabbed it out of my hand, turned the safety off, and everything went black from there. I woke up in a hospital bed with my parents and sister around me with a mild concussion. Apparently, he beat me unconscious with the handle of the pistol and then threw me out of the car and sped off. He was then cornered by police after an ongoing chase, and with no other option, he shot himself in the head. That was the scariest life experience I've ever had. Who says truly disturbing things and has numerous weapons on hands at all times, including an effing machete. If I heard on the news that an axe murderer murdered his entire family, I'd be like, yep, that sounds about right. Guy in jail waiting transport to prison. He got life without. He arred and murdered a young girl. He got wood talking about his crimes in court. I met a guy in a Parisian brothel who was ostensibly security, but in reality there was there to pressure customers to buy the overpriced drinks and max out their credit cards on the ladies. I didn't know it was a brothel. As soon as I saw they were charging $25 for a small glass of beer, and the place was full of young women who were all far too interested in my ugly ass, I started to nope out of there. This intimidating, muscular man in a suit, complete with facial scars, held my bicep and pulled me back inside. I told him I wanted to leave and that I would call the police if he tried to stop me. At that point, he gave me a look, and to this day I swear he looked like he was trying to decide whether to kill me or not. It was that close of a thing. He let me go with a face like thunder. I truly believe I was in mortal danger and escaped only because of this guy's whim, or perhaps he didn't think he could avoid problems with the police. One scary MF. Definitely killed before, and probably would again. My mom. I've never met someone who can manipulate as well as she does. She can make you distrust your eyes and your memories. Maybe 8 years ago now, I was working at a local Subway with this really nice kid who always seemed eager to help. I was watching the news one day and saw that he had gotten arrested for setting up traps for humans up in the canyon. If I remember correctly, they were pitfall traps. I did administration work at a local residential drug and alcohol treatment facility in the early 20s. in my early 20s. I'm 35 now. Paper pushing, filing, and the like. The scariest dude I ever met was this guy who was there for alcohol and some kind of narcotic. I was delivering something urgent and unrelated to his counselor, and he just happened to be in her office when I knocked on the door frame. The door was open, and he looked straight at me as I continued describing how he liked to get effed up, mutilate small animals, especially squirrels and cats, and pleasure himself all over the eviscerated remains. The way he said it was so matter-of-fact, like how a person describes how they like their coffee, and there was nothing behind his eyes. It was like they were dead and glazed over. It was like looking into the face of every serial killer mugshot I've ever seen all at once. Looking at him was like getting hit with a low-voltage electrical current. I dropped the message on the counselor's desk and avoided the hell out of that guy for the rest of the stay. I still think about him a lot to this day. I hope that the man is either dead or in prison, because that man was a sociopath looking for a place to happen. I worked with a guy who claimed he worked in a middle school and used to take the grade schoolers into a closet and R them. He was in his 30s, a real piece of garbage. I always thought he was full of shit. A few years later, he was having sex with a 12-year-old, and the girl's uncle found out and came over with a shotgun, and that was that. The world is a better place without him. To my country's Tier Special Forces selection. Most of the conversations I've heard around the military of people who've met, one or two of them goes along the lines of, I was surprised. They didn't look intimidating at all. They looked like normal people, maybe even a little out of shape. Well, during the selection process, I got to meet about 20 of these guys, and I can say without reservation that these guys are effing killing machines. It makes you feel like a real imposter. One of my old neighbors. I had lived next to him from the age 10 to 13 before I moved. A couple of years after the move, we heard about him getting arrested. I guess his wife had seen him looking at CP on his phone and reported him. When the police showed up, he tried to kill himself but failed. Upon investigation, they figured out that he was trying to meet up with underage girls online. I never really paid attention to him, so that he could have been watching me off of his deck, and I wouldn't have known. This fake worker is an off-brand store in England that almost forced me to buy his stuff. May he F off well. Not someone I've met personally, but Joel Guy Jr. He killed his parents after they decided to cut him off financially. He was 28 at the time. He stabbed them, cut them up, placed their body parts in an acid to attempt to dissolve the remains. He cut off his mother's head and cooked it on the stove for 3 days. The court footage shows his blank expression while the coroner describes all the details of what he did. No emotion whatsoever. The dude is insane. Google it and you'll see what I mean. My ex. Dear God, women fawn over him just like I once did. He was the most masterful, manipulative person I've ever met. An expert at reading people, and a most accomplished gaslighter. Physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, sexually abusive towards relationship partners. I've got questions about his ex-wife's daughter, too. He would just out of the blue talk about how awful child molestation is, but he often sought out women with kids. Made me wonder why child molestation was on his mind all the time. You're either 100% with him or you're his enemy. There is no in between. It's all black and white. A thief and a liar, and he actually just thought it was fun to fight people. He just beat the shit out of someone because he could. Impulsive and reckless, a loose cannon. He was enormous, a giant block of muscle. I almost killed myself because I didn't see a way out of that relationship, and I definitely couldn't stay in it. I was terrified of him. My meth head aunt. She's been on meth for 20 plus years, and it definitely shows. Karen O'Connor, Olympic and Pan medalist in equestrian Day 3 eventing. She was giving a clinic over the course of several days. I chose to audit it instead of ride because I was terrified of her. I didn't have the funds, and just no thanks. Karen started to get frustrated with these girls on saddlebreds. They weren't listening at all, and the horses were taking advantage of all of it. Karen hopped on one at one point to try to get somewhere with one of them. I had been photographing the whole clinic, as I knew most of the riders would share the photos of them. I thought the moment was interesting and decided to take a few pictures of Karen's progress with the horse. Oh boy. Wrong choice. When she got off, she got in my face and screamed at me that I was foolish and juvenile for taking photos at a time like that I had better not post them on Facebook or anywhere, and that they had probably not showing that method correctly. She said she wanted to break my camera and didn't want to see me pick it up again. For some reason, I came back the next day, and somehow I ended up being the one to drive her around in a golf cart. No, I didn't do that right either. She also made several riders cry that day and whipped the shit out of a friend's horse when he wouldn't go to the water. So yeah, not the biggest Karen fan. I got some different answers on this one. On the most, oh my god, I'm going to get hurt level, it was either the dude that followed me on public transport while jerking off, or the guy that knocked on my door trying to kick me out of my flat by claiming it was now belonged to him. I am still emotionally upset by this. It's probably the kindergarten teacher that abused me and thought that she still works with children to this day. There is nothing I can do. Editing. I had my favorite driving instructor, who it turns out was a freaking artist. The insane meth addict who yelled, "Hail Satan!" as he tried to stab me in the heart while walking down a dark alley between Melrose Avenue and Hollywood. My third-grade bus driver. He was always so expressionless, it's hard to explain. A guy in full black chasing my friend and I down while we were going to his house. Luckily, we got away and got to his house while confusing the guy. When I was a child, it was my stepdad. If you've ever witnessed someone in the midst of a cocaine-fueled rage, you know what I mean. My stepdad always had a temper, but cocaine took his repressed anger from 3 to 10. As a 6-year-old, I watched him stomp around our house, turning over furniture, tearing, ripping, smashing any inanimate object that was in his path, yelling at the top of his lungs in a stream of white-hot anger. If you made the mistake of making eye contact with him during the height of his rage, he'd stomp over and stoop down, bringing his face within inches of yours, barely pausing to breathe before continuing on yelling, almost screaming about whatever it was that made him angry, and there was a lot that made him angry. Splatters of spittle would land on your cheeks, and you dared not move to wipe the spit away. After the initial terror subsided, enough to allow you to disassociate, because what he was yelling about didn't really matter at that point anymore. You could watch a vein in his forehead pulse and follow the path it made all along his face. You know that scene from the 1993 Jurassic Park where the kids are in the car and the T-Rex swoops down and looks into the car? That is this pretty accurate description of what it felt like. Being present during one of my stepdad's rages, except it wasn't as calculated. It was just white-hot, uncontrollable rage. I'd already been through a lot with my own biological father by the age of 6. Living with my stepdad was like living in the sequel of a horror movie, but instead of it being a cheesy follow-up, it was a fresh take on an old horror. The only difference now is that I wasn't raped in the sequel. As I aged, my biological parents got help, but my stepdad continues to self-medicate and go on to rages, even breaking furniture, going as far as to lay hands on some of my siblings, something remarkably he didn't do when we were younger. Nowadays, my stepdad has mellowed out. He still self-medicates, but he's had 2 heart attacks and enjoys his role as a grandpa to one of the biological grandsons he is able to regularly spend time with. I encountered and met a few individuals who scared me quite a bit as I grew up. With one exception, I was able to avoid being in complete danger because of what I had experienced at the hands of my parents. Family scared me more, with one exception, than any stranger that I have ever met. Well, that's some pretty deep stuff, so we're going to end that video right there. I hope you have enjoyed listening to this. Not really a topic that is too entertaining, but sometimes it's good to hear other people's perspectives, find out what other people are going through, give you a little humility, a little empathy. It's thought-provoking, if nothing else. Anyway, thank you for listening and watching this, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.